Soy Hashem, Ite Rachel Bolecho, Chol Atzos Soy Mali. Rana Mishlosecha, Shem Eloheinu Yitro. Imali Adonai Kol Shalisecha. After he died, Yeshia Adonai Yeshia. Taneu Shvei Kodsha, Ibures Yesha Yemina. Elu Barechev, Elu Basisim, Menachem Shem Adonai Elohim Nazareth. Aim of Korah and follow, Nachnu Kamnu and Seder. Adonai Heshia Melech Yaneinu Yem Kareinu. Okay, we're going to start a new Perek. Enough copies, there should not be anything missing. Thank you. Okay. So we finished Perek Daled. I know there's a few lines there in Perek Daled that I said are at the end in the bracket in Kabbalah that are not so easy to understand. So I will maybe go back to it. As part of it is going to be explained in this chapter. I'm skipping Perek Hay because that's going to be very difficult. That'll take us a very long time. Good morning. We need a lot of background knowledge to really understand that. So I'll do Vav. We're going to do Perek Vav. We're going to only do Vav. We're not going to go further than Vav. And hopefully that'll at least bring a certain segment of this whole subject to completion. So let's just go over briefly what we've done. So again, Perek Aleph in Shaar Hayichud Vehaemunah. Oh, we need more. Here, here's a bunch.
It's on the table.
It's on the table? Okay. So Perek Aleph is where it explained that just the fact that the words of Hashem with which He created the world is something which is constant and constantly recreating the universe and every single detail in the world. And if that would go away for 1 second, the world could go back to where it was before creation. That's number one. And number two, and what is the force that creates the world? It's the words of Hashem and Asara Maimaris. And those words, they break up and divide into other words, and divide into other words, and it's shtalshul until there are infinite amount of words, and every word gives life to a different detail in creation. And the words are designed in a way that they give life to that specific creation. That's Perek 1. Perek 2 explains the reason why. Why is it that Hashem's chayas is supporting the creation every second? And when humans do things, you don't need that. You do something once, and it lasts for either very long or forever. And the answer is because we create yesh miyesh, and that means we're really not creating. It existed without us, before us, and therefore it could continue to exist independently without us. Yesh mi'ayin means that nothing existed before, not even the potential, And therefore, its existence is only and exclusively because of the Dvar Havaya, because the creative force. And that's why, as long as the creative force is there, it exists. If the creative force is gone, then it couldn't exist in one moment. Which means that even while it exists, it's nothing but the creative force, because it doesn't have any substance of its own. Then chapter 3 goes into explain that based on all that, we can understand the concept of bittul, that the world is really batul to Hashem, and that if not for the Dvar Havai, the world couldn't exist. So therefore, if that's the case, then the world is really not its own entity, and it's in truth, everything is batul to Hashem. Because it depends on Hashem. And then he goes on in Perek Dal to explain this bittul, and he uses the Perek Gimel, he used the analogy of the sun and the sunlight. That's chapter 3. And then the last chapter, he explains the meaning of Kishemer Shemogin Havaya Lakim, which is that how is it possible, though? He ends up with the question, how is it possible for the world to exist if everything is really batul? So he began to explain that there's two names of Hashem. One is Shem Havaya and one is Shem Elokim. And Shem Havaya is the source of creation, chesed, and Shem Elokim is like the Mogen, that's like the shield that hides Hashem's light and the attribute of Gevura, and that's what makes it possible that the world should be seen as if it was an entity in itself in its own right. Now to explain this further, again, we're not going to do chapter 5, we're going to do chapter 6, which is a continuation. So starting with page 76. Anyone need more? There's copies here. Page 76 in Lessons in Tanya, the new printing. Hine Shem Elokim Ushem Midas Agura Bat Tzimtzum. The name Elokim, because before he started to speak about the two names of Hashem, and they're compared to the sun and the shield. So the name Elokim, this is the attribute of Gevura and Tzimtzum. V'lachein Hogam came b'gematria hateva, and that's why it's b'gematria hateva, nature. V'shemaster ha'er shelamayla ha'mahave u'machaya ha'olam, because it hides the light which creates the world. V'nira, and because of Shem Elokim, it looks like ha'olam oimed b'snag b'derech hateva, as if the world is on its own and everything is happening just because of the laws of nature, and not that Hashem is really guiding every little detail. Shem Elokim Zeh, and this name Elokim, Humogem v'nartik l'Shem Havaya. It's a shield for Shem Havaya, which means Lahalim Ha'or V'Chayis. It conceals the light. It conceals the Chayis, the life force that flows from Shem Havaya and creates Yesh Miyayin. So the Shem Elokim's function is Shelo Yizgalan L'Nebrayim, that it shouldn't be revealed, be batul b'mitzias, and then the creation would become batul, as if it would be totally batul to Hashem. And now he's going to explain, you see there are a lot of notes here, there's a lot going on. What is he going to explain now? So basically what it comes out to be is that there's two things. There's the power of chesed that Hashem has, with which he reveals light. And this is Hashem manifesting his light, and he manifests to the point that he creates Yesh Miyayin. And then there's another attribute, which is Gevura, and the attribute of Gevura is blocking the attribute of Chesed. So he's going to explain now that even though the attribute of Gevura is blocking Hashem's light and doesn't make us see it the way it really is, and therefore it appears in our eyes that it's independent because of the attribute of Gvura. But in reality, Gvura and Chesed are really one and the same. Let's look at the words aside. This Gevura with Tzimtzum Zeh, this Tzimtzum, in essence, it's also Chesed. It's not really Gevura. Even though it's called Gevura, but in essence, it's the same as Chesed. And Chesed, it says, there's a pasuk which says, we brought the pasuk before, Chesed Olam Yibana, that the world was created with Chesed. So this is B'chinas Gevura Klula B'Chesed. This would be Gevura which is included in Chesed, which means that, like we learned in the other class when we're learning about the spheres, how they include each other, that Chesed itself is to reveal, to manifest Hashem's light. Gevura is to withhold. But if the purpose of withholding is to reveal, then in essence, the Gevura is actually Chesed, not Gevura. In other words, the way we define things is not just by what it is technically. We define things by what its content is. To use an example, remember we once spoke about this in class, not that long ago either, and that is that Torah is supposed to be all about unity. Not only it has in it unity, and the Torah focuses on unity, and the Torah supports unity, but in the words of the Rambam, the whole purpose of Torah, and the Torah was given only exclusively for this purpose, for unity. And yet we see that there's no other lahavdil religion in the world, there's no other civilization in the world that is set up with so many partitions and so many separations like there is in Torah. That wherever you turn, there's this separateness. And the separateness between the 12 Shvatim, and separateness between a Kohen and a Levi, and the separateness between men and women, and the separateness between Yidden and Goyim, and the separateness between Eretz Yisrael and other countries, and the separateness between Yerushalayim and Eretz Yisrael, and the separateness between Shabbos and other days, and Yom Tov. The whole Torah is filled of that this is one way and that's different. And men and women are been assured have to have a mechitza, literally a wall separating them, and so on and so forth. And Beis Hamikdash is only for Kahanim, and this is only for this, and that's only for that. Anyone remember the answer? I do appreciate the opportunity to keep repeating the same idea again. But come on, someone knows the answer, for sure.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Question is that how come we can say, why aren't these two things a contradiction? On one hand, we say the whole purpose of Torah, this is the words of the Rambam, Lo nitna Torah, ella lases shalom b'olam. The whole purpose of Torah is exclusively to bring everything together, shalom. And then I'm saying, when you look in Torah itself, there you are, there's a partition between 12 Shvatim. Each Shevet had their own place in Eretz Yisrael. They traveled separately. They had a different banner. They had a different symbol. Everything was separate. And then there's a partition between Kohanim, Levim, Yisraelim. If a Yisrael does what a Kohen is supposed to do, God forbid, is the opposite of life. And a Levi does what a Kohen does what separateness. Men and women are separate both in halacha, different mitzvahs, and also they're not allowed to be together. There have to be a distance between them. And then wherever you turn, Eretz Yisrael and other countries have different halachas. In Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim and Eretz Yisrael also has different halachas. Shabbos and Yom Tov, Shabbos and weekdays. So, which basically means that the whole Torah is set up of differences between one thing and another, and very strong differences. And then we say the whole purpose of Torah is to bring everything together.
If everything's the same, it doesn't be separated, and that's not true. The only way that everything can be brought together is if it's separated. Separation.
That's the answer. And how could you explain that?
Everybody has different role in the school. Like Kohanim has their role, and they have their role, and this is how you create like a nation.
Right. So it's the separateness that brings everybody together. I gave a mashal then, it's not my mashal, the Rebbe's mashal, which is very simple, but brings out the point, the mashal of fire and water. That how could you have fire and water working together? You put the water in a pot, and you put the pot on the fire. So somebody would say that if fire and water work together, can create something which you wouldn't have without that. Now you can put water in a pot and you can cook things with the water. So if that's the case, let's do something even better. Put the water on the fire itself. There shouldn't be any pot separating the fire from the water. And there'll be more achdus. The water and fire will become so much one, they'll accomplish more things. So the answer is that the purpose of this pot is not to make a separation between fire and water. On the contrary, the purpose is to bring them together. The only way fire and water could be together is if there's a wall between them. And these are all the walls that are found in Torah. So it means you see a wall in a shul, someone who doesn't have the understanding looks at this wall and says, wow, this is separating men from women. But if you understand the content, no, the wall is actually to bring women and men together, that they should be able to be together in a healthy way, in a positive way. In marriage, the fact that there's certain halachas where husband and wife can't be together. The purpose is they should be together in a better way, in a stronger way, not the opposite. And the partition between Yidden and Goyim is also the same thing. It's not that there should be a separation. The purpose is shalom, that if Yidden and non-Jews live in this world and Yidden do what they're supposed to do, and the non-Jews do what they're supposed to do, and you don't cross the lines, then we can live together in a healthy way. Everything is like that. So what does it mean? It means that when you look at something, you don't judge by what you see physically, you judge by its content. So the same is here. Shem Elokim is concealing Shem Havaya, but if the purpose of that is to allow the light of Shem Havaya to be revealed in the world, then in essence it's not a concealment, it's part of the process of revealing. So the typical classical example of that is the example of the mashal, that when a Rab has a deep concept and he can't communicate to the student because doesn't have that depth, and therefore he communicates the deep concept through a mashal. The mashal is concealing the real depth of the nimshal. But the reason why he's giving a mashal, not because he wants to hide it from him, just the opposite. He wants to give him the seichel, the concept. But it's too deep. So he puts it into a mashal so he should be able to communicate it to the student. And therefore, without that, if he would hear the concept as it is, without a mashal, just in its purest form, he would be just totally confused, and it would just be something that he could not relate to and get nothing out of it. And like this, he gives him maybe a smaller, a lower level of understanding the concept, but he gave him the concept this way. He's withholding the concept. So the purpose of the mashal is actually to reveal, not to conceal. The purpose, the content. And even if you were to say, but it is concealing because the real depth of the mashal ultimately still remains hidden. So we said this many times, that the Gemara says that a student whose teacher is so much greater than him, but after 40 years, they can understand and fully get the full, complete understanding of what the Rebbe taught them, which means the mashal is just initially not to have all the depth. But then slowly the student looks into the mashal, and from the mashal learns more details and more details and more details, and eventually it can come a time where he can understand from the mashal everything that's hidden in the mashal. So really the purpose of the mashal is not to conceal, the purpose is to reveal. So Hashem has a light which is infinite. If he would shine his infinite light, the world couldn't be the way it is. So Hashem brought in Midas HaGevura to conceal that light. So what's the purpose of this concealing? Not to withhold his light, fakir. The purpose is that the infinite light should be able to shine in this world on some level. So therefore, the Gevura is really chesed, just like chesed. Because its purpose is chesed. So what do we want to bring out with this? That Gevura and chesed are together. It's not that Gevura is there to block chesed. Gevura is actually to help chesed advance, that chesed should be able to reveal itself. That's number one. Number two, even deeper than that, is another point which is going to bring out soon. That this concealment is only for us. But for Hashem, there is no concealment. Again, using the same analogy, when a teacher who understands things so deep that it'll take a student 40 years to get there, right? But when he gives the mashal, and in that mashal he hides all the details, is it a concealment for the teacher? Or does he look at the mashal, sees all the depth in it? Of course. It's only for the student that it's concealment. But for the teacher, it's not a concealment. So the way Hashem perceives the world, Gevurah doesn't really conceal Chesed. They're really one and the same. Everything that's in the Nimshal is in the Mashal. So it means that the attribute of Gevurah doesn't really conceal the Chesed. And that's the analogy that we spoke about on Friday, if you remember, that there's a halacha. The halacha is that if a man covers his head with his hand, not with a yarmulke, he can't make a bracha. And the reason is because you can't put covering on yourself. Good morning.
Good morning, Rabbi Majeski. Sorry, I'm very late.
I made it before you today, okay. Before you can't conceal something from yourself. That's the halacha. In fact, if another person puts his hand on my head, I could make a bracha because that's someone else's hand. But if it's my hand, it's not something which is blocking me, concealing me. It's an extension of me. So being that Gevurah comes from Hashem, He's the one who created the mashal. It's all Him. The Gevurah is from Him and the Chesed from Him. So to Hashem, the Gevurah is not a real concealment. And even for us, ultimately the purpose is to reveal, not to conceal. So let's start at the top of the page 80. From the fact that the midas include one another. And even though they're opposite midas, nevertheless they work together. Nira la'ayin, this shows us clearly and explicitly that Iyar that Hashem and His attributes are all one. Being that all the attributes are one with Hashem, therefore, because they're one with Hashem, so therefore they're also one with each other, because they're all one. Like it says in the words of Eliyahu Hanavi, Antu the Koshalain Umiyachalain Bar Milach L'Sichud Billah. You, Hashem, are the one that binds all the spirits and all the attributes together. And apart from you, there is no other unity there. So therefore, basically, being that they're all part of one, which is Hashem, so Chesed is an extension of Hashem, Gevurah is an extension of Hashem, so therefore they're both one, they're all one, they're not contradicting each other, and one doesn't really, truly block the other. And that's what it says in the Pasuk, so here's the part where he goes back to the original question. The original question in the first Perek was, why does it say, you should know this today. Really get this in your head, that Hashem hu Elokim. And then it says, you should take it to heart, which means not only know it, but really work on allowing it to penetrate and register in your heart. That Hashem hu Elokim. Hashem hu Elokim, before he asked the question, that's simple, that no other gods, only one God, one truth. But now he's explaining, it means to say that Havaya, which is revealing God's presence, and Elokim, which is concealing, is really one, because the concealment is for the purpose of revealing. Page 81. Sheshnei Shemus Eila, the two names, Havaya and Elokim, even though it seems like they're two opposites, but Heim Echad Mamish, they're really truly one. Shagam Shem Elokim, even the name Elokim, Hamitzamtzim, that its purpose is to contract Hashem's light. Its purpose is to conceal Hashem's right. It's really Shem is Chesed, just like the name Havaya. Because the attributes of Hashem, they're all one with Hashem. Remember, we said that Hashem is one, means that He's not a compound. He's not made up of 10 spheres, chas v'shalom. He's not made up of 10 different points, 10 different potentials. He's an absolute one. And therefore, all the attributes of Hashem are absolutely one with Him. So Chesed is absolutely one with Hashem, and Gevurah is one with Hashem. The Chesed and Gevurah are all one, they're all part of one source. Because the attributes of Hashem are with Him in a complete way. And Hashem and His name is one. What is His name? Midaisav. It means His midas, His attributes. Like even a human being, the person is one, but we're really made up of many different parts. Each organ is separate. There's a hand, and there's a leg, and there's a head, and a brain, and a heart, and eyes, and ears, and nose, and mouth, and they're all part of one person. And even the neshama also has different attributes, and each one is different than the other, and they all become one. By Hashem, chas v'shalom, to say that He's made up of different finite parts. He's one essence of infinity, and all these things come from Him. So therefore, Hashem and His midas are absolute one. It's not like two things that became one, but it's absolute one. In Cain, if that's the case, you should know that in the heavens above, and the earth below, there's no other entity existing other than Hashem. In other words, if Shem Elokim would really be concealing, that means something is blocking Hashem's presence, and there's a sort of an existing entity outside of Hashem. And that existing entity comes from Shem Elokim. But now that Shem Elokim is one with Hashem, so there can't be anything outside of Hashem, because Shem Elokim itself is part of Hashem. Page 82. Pirush. Shagam or Etzachumris, even the earth, which is material. Shaniris yesh gomer ein kol. When we look at the earth, at the world, we see it that it appears to the eye, in everybody's eyes, like it's an absolute entity and separate and independent of Hashem. But the real truth is ayin ve'epes mamish legabe kodesh baruch hu. It's absolutely nothing legabe Hashem. Only for us is it a concealment. To us it appears, we perceive it as if it's separate. But in essence, it's one, and Hashem sees it the way it is in truth, that it's all one. Hashem is one. And therefore, earth, and underneath the earth, which means in the most materialistic, physical places. I guess even in places that are lower, like Klippa, it's all one with Hashem. When it says Ayim Ve'epes, they're non-existent, it means they're non-existent as a separate entity. There's nothing there other than Hashem Himself. Clear so far? Then it goes on. Then the pasuk says, Ein Oid. What is that adding? He already said that it's all one. What does Ein Oid mean? There's nothing else. It goes like this. Ve'ein and it goes B'Shem Klal. Everything in the world can't even be called by any name. Not even the word Oid. Shalosh and Tafel.
Is the same phrase of Inad and
What?
Is the same phrase of Inad and or no?
Same praise?
Same phrase of Inad and
Yeah. It's not the same, but it's similar. It's a different pasuk. One place it says Ein Oid, and one place it says Ein Od Milvado. It's a different level of bittul. Yeah. It's another deep subject. So let me explain it orally, then we'll have to do it inside. When you say that the world is bottled to Hashem, and totally bottled to Hashem, there's two ways to see it. One way is that the world is bottled to Hashem means that it's insignificant compared to Hashem, but it's something. It's tafel. Tafel means something which is secondary. And I'm going to say this even though it's in the Perek, but first let's easy to explain and then we'll do it inside. Like the neshama and the guf. The guf is bottled to the neshama. And we know that the guf can't do anything without the neshama. So the guf is bottled to the neshama. But we can't say that the guf is totally a non-existent entity because the guf exists without the neshama. The guf, the neshama gives the guf the ability to be active. All the activity in the guf, the life of the guf comes from the neshama. But the very existence of the guf can continue to exist without the neshama. So that means that yes, the guf is bottled to the neshama, but it's like something which is tafel. Like we use the example in halacha, that you have two foods and you wonder which bracha you make on the two foods. Do you make both or do you make one? And the answer is one of them is an Iyar. Iyar means it's the primary food. And the other one is tafel, which means it's secondary. Then you only make the bracha on the Iyar. And the secondary thing is included in the primary thing because it doesn't have importance in its own right. So the guf doesn't have any importance in its own right because the power to live and to do and to act is only from the neshama. But it is an existing entity. By Hashem, we're saying that it's much more than that. Not only is the world and the whole universe and everything in creation bottled to him like something which is secondary, but it has no existence whatsoever because in the case of the guf, it's not created by the neshama. But in the case of Hashem, it's created by Hashem. And without Hashem, it can't even exist. Yeah.
So the phrase, I